Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our latest check-in with the 2025 Club World Cup. Yes, the group stage is now complete and the round of 16 bracket is set. In addition to looking at the upcoming games, we're looking at the strong performers so far, particularly those Brazilians. We're looking at some of the strongest European sides too, the teams we're surprised to see make a group stage exit, and much more. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, hello Mr. Taylor Rockwell.
Hello, Mr. Ryan Bailey. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk Club World Cup, a competition that has been ongoing and I have watched very little of until yesterday, where I watched a whole lot of it.
Oh, wow. Did you spend did you 24-hour block it out? How did you do this?
That's it. Yeah. The Clockwork Orange style. Had the eyes taped open. Just took it all in, and now I've retained none of it. It's going to be great.
Amazing. Happy Club World Cup Day for yesterday for you, Taylor. Graham Ruthven, how are you?
I'm very well. Ryan Bailey, how are you? Where in the world are you today? It feels like you've been on a tour of every podcast location in England. I was half expecting you to be on the Pyramid stage at Glastonbury for this recording.
I've had the BBC iPlayer on all morning, pining that I'm not at Glastonbury, Graham, this weekend. But yes, I'm somewhere hot, I think. That's all I know at this point. I'm a bit confused. Do you know when like a band goes on like a 100-date tour and they have to look up where they are every morning? I think I'm a bit like that at this point.
Yeah, just some random England location.
Yes.
Are you still saying good morning London? Like, you know how bands, when they don't know where they are, they just, that happens in Scotland all the time, where they'll just say hello Edinburgh. They're not in Edinburgh at all.
So when you get up in the morning, you open the windows and say good morning, Scotland's second city? Is that what you say?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Ryan, like in Spinal Tap, I think they tape it to the backs of their guitars, so they always know where they are. Do you tape it to the back of your microphone? You're just like, hello, London. Okay, yes, definitely still in London.
That's right. I'm definitely still in the UK because there's no AC, Taylor, and it is glorious. Patreon.
At least you're in a small, unventilated room, though. That should be fun.
It's marvellous, yes. But I'm excited, as you're you, Taylor, to talk Club World Cup with dear listener for the next hour or so. Before we get there, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is where you'll find our bonus content. We've got bonus episodes, bonus video, access to our Discord server where all the cool kids are hanging out. That's patreon.com/Total Soccer Show if you'd like to support us. A please and a thank you. All right, let's get into Club World Cup mode. Graham, is it fair to say the story of this Club World Cup, and there have been a few stories, but on the field, is it all about Brazil? All four Brazilian sides are through to the round of 16. We had Palmeiras topping Group A, albeit with a win over Al Ahly. We had Botafogo in Group B, getting through at Atleti's expense, that big statement win over PSG. Flamengo topping Group D with that big win over Chelsea. They're the current league leaders in Brazil. And Fluminense through in Group F as well. And Fluminense, I'd like to remind dear listener that I believe we covered this in our previews, that their goalkeeper is 44 years old and giving us all hope in our mid-40s. Wonderful stuff.
Yeah, maybe that is the story of the whole tournament, or maybe it is Acuna versus Denzel Dumfries and the tunnel fight that happened between those two. I can only presume that DAZN, you know how DAZN broadcast all that boxing nonsense with Jake Paul. I think they're going to have Acuna versus Dumfries as pay-per-view at some point in the future, and I will pay for it because that was incredible entertainment during the River Plate Inter Milan game. But yes, Ryan, I think the genuine story of this tournament so far has been the Brazilians. Initially, I'd hoped that Boca and River would also be part of that story as kind of like a South American contingent. And the Boca-Benfica game is still the best game that I've seen at this Club World Cup, and I've watched a bunch of this tournament. That was the night that it really felt like this tournament came to life. But honestly, since then, you know, Boca were poor. They drew that game against Auckland City when they really needed to rack up the goals. They had 41 shots in that game, which was wild. But every time I looked at that game, because Benfica Bayern was being played at the same time, but every time I was kind of second screening that one, but every time I looked at Boca, they were shooting from a bad position. It didn't really seem like they were ever going to score a load of goals against a part-time team, lest we forget Auckland City, my groundskeepers, of course. And River Plate were much more limited as a team than I was hoping they would be. They seem to be, as I was referencing with the Acuna Dumfries thing, they seem to be more interested in scrapping than actually playing soccer in the 3 games that they played, which was entertaining to a point, but when they really needed to do the thing to make the next round, they fell flat, and unfortunately we didn't see many of their top players playing at top level. Mastantuono, who is obviously joining Real Madrid after this tournament, is a great talent. The way that River Plate played at this tournament, I didn't feel like we really saw the best of him. But all 4 Brazilian teams are through. I think Flamengo have been the most impressive. Even if they did draw that final group game against LAFC, that was a bit of a dead rubber for them. They'd already secured top spot. Their win over Chelsea, I think, is probably the biggest statement result of the entire tournament so far. Not just because they won that game, but because it was so comprehensive. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't the Botafogo win over PSG. You could argue that 9 times out of 10 PSG win that game. Flamengo against Chelsea were just comprehensively better. You look at the numbers, the expected goals in that game, the way that they play, the fact that they were able to play their possession-heavy game against another possession-heavy team, a really rich one from the Premier League, was really impressive. And then the other 3 Brazilian teams, I've mentioned one of them already, Botafogo, Fluminense. I think both of those are quite conservative teams who will be dangerous in the knockout rounds. And then Palmeiras have been strange in that they do want to play on the front foot, and they've scored 4 goals in 3 games. At the same time, they haven't quite found the right balance throughout their team yet. They also came through probably the weakest group of the lot, so it feels like they haven't really found top gear or haven't really been tested yet. So I'm unclear on kind of what Palmeiras' level is at the moment. But we will get at least one Brazilian team in the quarters because of that Botafogo-Palmeiras last 16 game. So I'm looking forward to that. But the flip side of that is the way that this competition is built, the advantage the European teams have. The story of the Brazilians being the defining narrative of this tournament could end very quickly, and we could very quickly see the European teams sort of dominate the latter rounds.
Do you think that's how it will go, Graham?
I am not going to spoil. I think there will be one upset, one Brazilian over a European. I think we're going to do our bracket later. I'll keep that my prediction for then. But ultimately, yes, I still see like an all-European final, which honestly is where my interest might wane a little bit. That might be where the tournament feels a little bit like an imitation of the Champions League rather than the real thing. So far, I've thought it's been brilliant, but the vitality of the tournament might be lost in some of those all-European ties.
I have another question for you, Graham, about one of those Brazilian sides, specifically Flamenco's game against Chelsea. Did you watch that whole game?
I did, yes.
Why were Chelsea so ill-tempered from the start? I that was one of the more confusing things about this game. And obviously, you get the Nicholas Jackson red card. It is played at, I believe, 2 p.m. in Philadelphia, where I'm guessing it was quite hot and not the most comfortable of environments. But I sort of knowing the score going in, I expected it to be that Flamenco were the more physically aggressive team, and that Chelsea kind of got flustered and frustrated and started kind of kicking out. It felt like from the jump, Chelsea were really petty, and there's the Liam Delap little elbow that he gets booked for. There's the Cucurella yellow for an incident that didn't need to happen, and obviously there's the red card stamp as well. Yeah. It felt like Chelsea were just kind of out of sorts from the jump, which is not trying to take anything away from Flamengo. I was just very confused by that one.
I think they were just flustered by the fact they came up against a team that they were the favourites to beat, and they sort of beat them at their own game. Mm-hmm. And the financial advantage that Chelsea have, I mean, I don't know how much of that is at the forefront of their mind. They're probably not thinking about how much they've spent on wingers in the last 3 transfer windows, but that feeds into the subconscious idea that they're meant to be the big dog in that tie. They're meant to dictate things, and that's not how that game went at all. And I thought the most impressive thing about Flamengo throughout this group stage has been how consistent they are and how they play. No matter who they're up against, they want to control the game with the ball. They want to win it back quickly when they lose it. Some of their combination play through the midfield and into the attack is amazing. And Chelsea were put in the washing machine by Flamengo, who were absolutely dominant. That right side between Wesley and Gerson is a really reliable funnel into the attack. I thought Cucurella, who's been great for Chelsea in 2025, had one of the more difficult games that I've seen him have recently. So it was just a game where nothing really went right for Chelsea, and that was compounded by Nicholas Jackson coming on and doing what was it? What was the Liverpool game? Was it Steven Gerrard in a Manchester United game? Do you remember he came on at half time and got sent off after about Nicholas Jackson basically did that, and that's the second red card he's had for Chelsea in 3 games. So he's determined to end his Chelsea career with Liam Delap coming in.
Didn't he say he had a weird statement that was a soccer malfunction? He used a strange phrase to describe that incident.
Weird.
There's a few things that Nicholas Jackson could describe as a soccer malfunction in his game.
And Ryan, as long as you're talking about aging goalkeepers giving us all hope, that Flamenco midfield also giving us all hope, where you've got Jorginho, Eric Pulgar, and Georgian de Arrasqueta. I think the combined age of that midfield 3 is 95. So the 3 of them continue to play well and continuing to cause problems. Also a really enjoyable part of this tournament for me. Yeah.
And I do think one of those players, Taylor, de Arrasqueta, Felipe Luis, I think has a really difficult call to make on him for the knockout rounds. The best comparison I can make with him is he's a bit like Flamengo's Bruno Fernandes, where he is Flamengo's top scorer. So much of their attacking sequences flow through him. A goal that he scored against Esperance, he kind of did that Bruno Fernandes thing of just withholding his run, and then he finishes from the cutback at the byline. But it's similar to Fernandes in that against a team like Bayern, who Flamengo are going to meet in the last 16, he might be someone that you could sacrifice to get more security in the middle. And actually, Felipe Luis did take him off against LAFC, and Flamengo improved in that game, and they had a little bit more control. So there would be precedent for it, even though he is maybe their most reliable goal threat. Against Bayern, I'll be interested to see if Felipe Luis feels that they can go toe-to-toe, or whether he might, with a place in the quarterfinals on the line, he might make a little bit of a concession there.
I think Felipe Luis has proven himself to be a very adept manager. I hope his logic is not, well, it worked against LAFC, so it should work against Bayern. That might run him into some problems pretty quickly.
Yeah. Taylor, obviously it's great that the Brazilian teams are performing so well. They're getting a spotlight for fans like us who candidly probably don't watch as much South American soccer as we should. But it is a byproduct, an unfortunate one for this, that we'll see Brazilian players picked off from their teams by European sides at a greater rate than we see already. I'm picturing if Bayern or Inter get beaten by their respective Brazilian opponents in the next round, their revenge will be, I'm just going to buy all the good players then.
We'll
How do
have
you like
some of
that?
I mean, and some are already gone, right? Estevao is already joining Chelsea, I believe, this summer. So, yeah, I mean, that's a distinct possibility. But Graham and I talked about the Brazilian league and the present state thereof on this week's Soccer 101. And it's an interesting time for Brazilian football. It feels like you have a kind of a strong blend of veterans, like some of the people we've already talked about, like 30-plus players coming back into the league and strengthening in that way. Then you have plenty of like 17, 18, 19-year-olds who are breaking through and could get some of those big money moves. But then you also have players performing really well who are in their prime years, like in their mid-20s. And so I think even if they lose some of those young talents, it still feels like at least a few of these Brazilian clubs will continue to strengthen and recruit and be just fine. So it's an exciting time, not just because of the Club World Cup for Brazilian domestic soccer. Less certain about the national team, but Carlo Ancelotti has them at the World Cup, so at least there's that.
Yeah, okay. So Graham, in the round of 16, we've got a quarter of the teams are Brazilian. We've got, by my count, 3 non-European and non-Brazilian teams in Al Hilal, Inter Miami, and Monterrey, and the rest European. Is that about the mix we were expecting at this point, or are we seeing the non-European sides having a stronger knockout appearance ratio than we expect?
We've got one more Brazilian team than I expected and one fewer European team than I expected, in that the biggest shock so far, the biggest name to drop out of this tournament is Atletico Madrid. And they were in the group with Botafogo. They come into this tournament in really poor form. I think they're sitting 8th in the Brazilian league right now. So I don't think many people would have predicted that Atleti would drop out. I don't know whether we're going to talk a little bit more about them as one of the kind of poorer performing teams later on in this episode. But otherwise, yeah, I think you look at, Palmeiras, there was no guarantee that they were going to finish ahead of Porto. I guess you could argue that's a little bit of an upset right now, but Porto, it's not great. It's not a vintage Porto team, so I don't think that's hugely surprising that Palmeiras. I think the bigger upset is Inter Miami. Frankly, have finished ahead of Porto in that group. But yeah, I think pretty much that's kind of the makeup that we expected. From this point on, it's going to be with some of those matchups. There's only one all non-UEFA last 16 tie, if that makes any sense. Besides that, every other non-UEFA team is up against a UEFA team, and so we're going to get a real statement on where this tournament is and whether we are going to get that kind of European-dominated latter rounds, which I sort of suspect we will, unfortunately. I'd quite like a few non-UEFA teams to get through.
Yeah, okay. And in terms of the actual biggest upset result, Graham, is it the PSG lost to Botafogo, or is it the Chelsea lost to Flamengo? What's actually the biggest on-field shock we've seen?
Well, in terms of the seedings, I think you have to say it's Botafogo beating PSG. Of course, you've got the newly crowned European champions there, and how impressive PSG looked in their first game against Atletico Madrid, where they just absolutely demolished them. I think the manner of the performance by Flamengo has been, that's why I said it was the biggest statement performance, because it really, in my eyes, made Flamengo dark horses for this tournament. And obviously they're going to have a bit of a litmus test against Bayern in the next round. But if they pull that off, they get through Bayern Munich. I think we really realistically have to look at Flamengo as a team that could potentially win this whole thing. I think we should also mention Auckland City getting a point against Boca Juniors as maybe being one of the biggest. Yeah, scored a goal. Took a point against Boca Juniors, who were poor in this tournament generally, but nonetheless one of the biggest clubs in South America, and have players like Edison Cavani and really experienced performers there. So yeah, that has to be mentioned. In fact, in terms of the financial gulf between the teams, I think that would be by far and away the biggest upset.
Yeah. Can I throw one more in there, even though it doesn't really have that financial gulf aspect to it? But Inter Miami getting past FC Porto is definitely not a result that I expected. I didn't expect any MLS team to get out of their group, so that Inter Miami I think is to their credit. And then going the other way, I feel kind of bad for Martin Anselmi. I talked about him in the group previews, where he is the very young manager coming in. He doesn't have a ton of managerial experience, certainly not at the top level. He's only 39 years old. And though I doubt anyone is putting a huge amount of stock into the Club World Cup if you fail to get out of your group, it is probably not the way he wanted to start or continue on in this kind of preseason mode. And I don't think he's really convincing anybody that wasn't already convinced. So maybe not the strongest Porto team and not maybe the best situation for them. All the same, it's still a team that we see regularly make it in the Champions League, competing for the top prize in Portugal. So for Miami to be able to kind of find a way to win is to their credit very much.
Very good indeed. We take a quick break. When we come back, let's take a look at the strongest contenders in this tournament so far, including, come on guys, pick up Pep Guardiola. But Pep Guardiola's team, easy for me to say. They've been tremendous in this team. We'll focus on them and much more after this. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Club World Cup Roundup. Taylor, Man City, the only team with a 100% record thus far. Yeah. They've scored 13 goals. That big old 5-2 win over Juventus to close out the group on Thursday. They've got Rodri back. They're scoring crazy, beautiful goals. They're scoring Man City-style goals. They are now the favourites to win with the bookmakers. I checked this morning. Amazingly, PSG is second still. Then Real Madrid. But City now very much in the catbird seat, as we like to say around these parts.
And they should be, even if I still don't know why we say catbird. That's a Joe Lowry question, and he is no longer with us because he's in South Dakota. I think the bookmakers are correct, and I would be putting all my money on Manchester City to win this and maybe win the Premier League. Not to be overly reactionary, but my goodness, do they look as strong as ever, and certainly much stronger than they looked for large chunks of last season. Some of that, I think, is Rodri coming back into the fold and doing all the Rodri things that he wasn't able to do last season due to injury. But you've got Aït-Nouri starting, playing well, providing the assist for the assist that kind of unlocks defenses. You've got Thierry Reinders starting, pulling strings, being a very comprehensively solid midfielder. And it just feels like new players are hitting the ground running. Injured players are returning. Everybody seems rejuvenated. Everybody seems up for it. And what I was really struck by in that destruction of Juve is how much off-the-ball movement there is and how many quick passes there are. Just when you think there couldn't be another pass, there is another pass. And that is the hallmark of a Pep team. That is the hallmark of his most dangerous teams, is how quickly they're able to find a pass and find a pass and find a pass, and it just becomes this domino effect where you end up tearing your opponent apart. They did that for at least 3, if not 4 of the 5 goals against Juve. One of them is a worldie from Savinho, which deserves credit unto itself. But I feel like this is a resurgent Man City side with a point to prove. Everybody looks up for it. Everybody looks strong.
Yeah, they look absolutely frightening. And they look like, to your point, Taylor, they look like a Pep team again in the way that they didn't for a lot of last season. And you can see the evolution happening. And Pep, throughout the 3 games, has used different players in different roles. He's used Thierry Reinders, for example. He played the game against Wydad as a kind of Rodri-type anchor. Was really good in that position. Then comes in for the game last night against Juventus. Rodri's playing, well, unsurprisingly, as the Rodri in the team, and Reinders is a little bit.
It'd be weird if he was the Ederson in the team.
Yeah. You be me, and I'll be you, and you be someone else. Yeah, but to be fair, that is actually a bit of that's the Pep DNA in Manchester City. And we've had Ryan Cherky playing as something of a false 9 in some games, and the new signings in general have looked great. I think Aït-Nouri might be the pick of the bunch so far. He was brilliant against Juve. Already looks to have a good understanding with Jeremy Doku. His through ball for the first goal was excellent. And the way that City are rotating through Bernardo Silva and Cherky and Reinders and Rodri, who started the Juve game as well, it's just very impressive stuff. And I think the biggest tactical change so far has been the introduction of orthodox high and wide fullbacks. They're back again, finally. Pep stopped using centre-backs as fullbacks. He's got actual fullbacks in his team. And what that then allows Pep to do is then push the wingers inside, and they get some really nice possession sequences by having those central players together. Really interesting to see Jeremy Doku in a more central area, particularly in that Juve game, and he was brilliant in that match. So far, I've kind of thought of Doku as someone who wants to isolate defenders one-on-one, and you get him into space. Well, he's not really playing that role anymore, and he's been great. And then the thing that does by having those central players, so many central players, obviously in possession, you get those nice quick passes that you were talking about, Taylor, that nice combination play, which is, quintessential Pep stuff. But then out of possession, it covers City for the weaknesses that we saw last season, where it is harder to play through them when they've got so many players in the centre of the pitch. So, look, they've come through a relatively favourable group with Wydad, Al Ain and Juve, who aren't exactly great at the moment. But just watching the performances that City are stringing together, they look like some of Pep's best teams in the past, and that is a scary thought for next season.
Yeah. Taylor, I suppose this has given us an understanding as to why Pep had the stomach for the rebuild, because I think some of us question that, why he extended the contract, why he stayed on with Man City. 4D chess, he's done it again, hasn't he?
Yeah. Turns out when you sign a bunch of very good players, then add them to a team that was already pretty good, and then get your very important player back from injury, you're going to be okay. You're going to be just fine. And I do think I have City winning this whole thing. I have them getting comfortably by Al Hilal in the next round. No disrespect to Al Hilal, who have been solid at this tournament, but I just don't see how they hold up against that City attack and how free-flowing it can be.
Yeah. And we have Man City and Real Madrid on opposite sides of the bracket now, so they can only meet in the final, which maybe they will do. Graham, Real Madrid, let's get to them, held by Al Hilal in their opener, where we saw a very, very sweaty Xabi Alonso. I think he still maintained his sweatiness throughout this tournament, to be fair to him. But those wins over Pachuca in Charlotte and Salzburg in Philly, they are looking pretty good too.
Yeah, they are, and I thought we started to see, it was a bit of a shaky start in that game against Al Hilal. We spoke about that in our last roundup after match day 1, where we saw a lot of the, what was it, Courtois, what was the word, the term, the Ancelotti automations. We saw a lot of those in that game. I think from the Pachuca game forwards and heading into last night's game as well against Salzburg, we've started to see some of Alonso's influence in this team. So for that Pachuca game, Rodrigo was dropped for Valverde. I don't think he comes in for the Salzburg game either. So he really does seem to be on the outside looking in. And it was a high defensive line, much higher in that game against Pachuca. Vinicius and Valverde, they were pushed high in wide areas to apply more pressure from the front. Didn't really work when they had 11 players on the pitch, weirdly, in that game. Then we see the red card for Raul Asensio, and that comes from when Vinicius doesn't put enough pressure on the ball, the pass is played over the top and Pachuca are in behind. That happened 2 or 3 times in the first 15 minutes of that game. Then Real Madrid go down to 10 men. Weirdly, that suited them a lot better in that match. So Tchouaméni, he drops into centre-back. Valverde came into the inside to the midfield 3 with Arda Güler and Bellingham. And then Vinicius was the link between the midfield and Gonzalo Garcia, who, by the way, is this young striker who Alonso has brought in from Castilla. He had a great season for Castilla last season. Alonso has quite clearly recognised that he needs some form of centre-forward in this team. He's been brought in and Garcia's looked great. I think he scored in 2 of the 3 games. So he's someone who seems to have a real future under Alonso for Real Madrid. And the player in that game against Pachuca, the player who made that approach work was Dean Huijsen, who kept on stepping into central midfield. That would then open up options from the midfield into the attack. So after the red card, Real Madrid went into this shape where, as I say, Tchouaméni was in central midfield, Arda Güler, central defence I should say, Arda Güler was in central midfield. Vinicius was much more narrow. He kept a lot of that, even with 11 men. Alonso kept a lot of that for the Salzburg game. He dropped Tchouaméni just straight up into the back 3, and it wasn't like he was stepping into midfield. He was just in the back 3, Tchouaméni. It was Arda Güler in the middle, which is where Alonso's used him in a couple games now, which is really interesting. Then it was a narrow front 3 of Vinicius, Gonzalo Garcia and Bellingham. And interestingly, Bellingham, who normally would shade to the left for Real Madrid, is now shading to the right, where he can combine with his best pal Trent, which is interesting to see the two of them. So for all intents and purposes, the 4-3-3 that we saw Alonso use at Leverkusen was used in this game against Salzburg, and I didn't fully expect that. I thought it was going to be more like straight up 4-2-3-1, and obviously there's a bit of fluidity there, but with Tchouaméni going into the back 3, you looked at out of possession, it was a 3-5-2 out of possession. I still thought it was a bit passive at times, but they have so many line breakers, Real Madrid, and the width is maintained by the wing backs. Vinicius looked like his old self. His assist for the Valverde goal is excellent. His goal himself, Real Madrid go from one end of the pitch to the other in like 5 seconds. So yeah, Real Madrid, I don't think they're quite... You look at Man City and they look like the finished product. Real Madrid aren't quite there yet, but you can see the evolution starting to happen under Xabi Alonso, which I find really interesting.
Did you say you expected them to be more in a 4-2-3-1 under Alonso?
Yes, just because I didn't see... I mean, the wild card here is Mbappe, I think, had a visit to Del Taco before his first game in the Club World Cup. And has... I shouldn't joke about it, actually. He was in hospital, but
especially if they're a sponsor, Graham.
Yeah, he is going to play in this tournament, I think, so... That's good news, but he's the wild card. How he comes back into this team and Real Madrid continue to play in this like 3-4-3, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
But with the players at his disposal, yeah, I thought Alonso would be much more kind of like subtle with the changes that he'd made after taking over.
I think it's been really exciting to see how quickly he's just gone for the back three and been like, it worked for me at Leverkusen, I'm going to do it here, and I'm going to find a way to make it work. Do you feel like Tchouaméni has looked better in a back three than when he just has the other center-back partner? That was an issue, to my mind, last season, is that he would occasionally look very good, occasionally had those moments where he would make questionable decisions, and I'm assuming with two center-backs around him, maybe those issues are less obvious. Yeah,
certainly out of possession, he looks a lot better just from the fact that he's got two other bodies alongside him. There's less space for him to cover. I still think there's a solution needed for him when Real Madrid do have possession, because there's essentially a man down in the midfield. And I saw Alonso kind of like in his rain jacket in the Orlando rain absolutely tipped it down in the first half of this game, which I've been to Orlando in June and July. I've experienced that before. But he, I never mention it. He was kind of like waving Tchouaméni forward, and he didn't really seem to be listening. He looked uncomfortable to do that. So there's still a bit of refinement there to be done. But yeah, interesting that we didn't see, with Asensio out suspended, we didn't see one of the other kind of like natural centre-backs coming into that team. He dropped Tchouaméni into the back three, which suggests he sees that as a viable long-term position for him.
All right, we are learning about Alonso Ball at Real Madrid.
Actually, Ryan, with that in mind, what have you made of Trent in that formation, in that combination with his best friend Jude Bellingham? Sorry, Ryan, but I'm fascinated by that one because I feel like a lot of the social media coverage was like, look at him jogging, look at him not defending. Yeah. This is what you paid $10 million for, and I feel like that's been slightly unfair.
Before we get there, do we think they're best friends, or are we just supposing that?
No, I think they are actually best buds. Yeah, I think they're very close because I think Trent tried to recruit Jude for Liverpool, and then Jude was actually successful doing the other way around.
Is Trent Jude's agent?
Possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And his brother's agent as well. He's got all the strings. He's pulling all of them. To answer your question, Taylor, I think Trent started really he was shaky in his first game against who was that game against? Al Hilal, where he was kind of moving into central midfield a lot of the time. It looked like he was being asked to carry the ball a lot, and that's never really been Alexander Arnold's game, and he would lose it a couple of times and moves would break down with him. I think he's improved over the course of the 3 games, and his best game was the third game against Salzburg last night, where he is high and wide, which obviously is a position that suits him. He had the most touches of any game so far for Real Madrid. That was due to the fact he had a player close to him in Bellingham. Güler was coming over as well. Right-sided centre-back was tucking in behind him, so he had a little bit of protection there. I think the back three gives him that protection, as you would expect. So again, similar as it is for a lot of these players under Xabi Alonso, it seems like he is slowly but surely figuring them out.
All right. Graham, can we talk about Bayern Munich for a minute as well? Obviously, they got that big Auckland win, that rocking match against Boca Juniors. They got the better of for that last minute Elise goal as well. But were defeated by Benfica. What are we thinking about Bayern at this stage?
Yeah, on the face of it, you have to consider them as one of the favourites for this tournament. But I don't know what it is about Bayern. I think I still see a team that struggles in defensive transition. I think the best illustration of this in the group stage was the goal that, in the game that you just mentioned there, Ryan, the Boca game, the goal that Boca scored against them. And look, it's a wonder goal by Merentiel, but Tan Stanisic make a real mess of defending the open space, and it's kind of comical how the two of them come over and they almost like wipe each other out of the play. And I just think the best teams will expose that in the knockout rounds, and that's sort of been the weakness for Bayern for even predating Vincent Kompany, but particularly since Vincent Kompany has come in. They're an excellent possession team. Their rotations through the midfield and into the attack are really good. That's still the case. They have struggled a little bit with sort of the consistency of their attack in this tournament. Musiala made his return from an injury, a long-term injury in this tournament. He then came off after 60 minutes of one game with a reoccurrence of that injury, which is not great for them. I think Michael Olise has been fantastic, continues to grow as the sort of main difference maker for this Bayern Munich team. Kind of weird that Leroy Sané is playing such a prominent role for this Bayern team, considering that his preparation for this tournament was spent flying to Istanbul to sign for Galatasaray. So kind of weird that he's still so prominent. I think Harry Kane has had, honestly, a poor tournament so far. Hasn't looked the sharpest so far. Didn't score any of those 10 goals against Auckland City, much to Ryan, yours and
I'd trade him for Tyler Adams any day, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, you made that point. So yeah, it's been a strange tournament for Bayern. I feel like I won't be able to make a solid judgment on them until the knockout round, starting with this game against Flamengo.
Right.
Is the Sane thing like when you schedule a haircut and then the day you're going to get it, you're like, actually, it kind of looks fine. Like maybe I don't need the trim. Is that what's happening here? Are they going to come away from this one thinking maybe we should have kept him, or do you feel like Kingsley Coman, Michael Olise will be just fine?
I think they're trying to get rid of Kingsley Coman, so I don't know if he's going to be just fine. But yeah, they'll
Serge Gnabry and Michael Olise.
Sure,
All
yeah,
right.
that, and the ghost of Florian Wirtz as well.
Oh, bless him. Taylor, we've talked about the strong sides. Maybe a bit of focus on the sides who haven't been as strong as we had hoped. We covered that the European sides to go home at this stage are Salzburg, Porto, and Atletico Madrid. I think, as we outlined, Atleti probably the real shock there. Boca Juniors also getting edged out by Bayern and Benfica in their group as well. And also with the MLS sides, obviously Inter, Miami are through, but LFC and Seattle both bottom of their groups with a point between them. Is that par, or did we hope for more from them?
I think for Seattle, it's par. That was a really difficult group. I don't think anybody predicted them to get a win and maybe not even a draw. They get some goals, so there's that. They weren't like blown out, so there's that. For LAFC, though, that's the one where I think we all thought, maybe not we all, but at least I and I think Joe thought that was one where maybe they could spring a surprise. Maybe they could get past... is it supposed to be ES Tunis, Graham? Is that what I'm supposed to call them?
Esperance is what everyone calls them.
Okay,
yeah,
okay. I thought you got special credit in the Discord for saying the nickname correctly or whatever it was. So wanted to yield to your authority. But either way,
in the Discord,
I thought maybe they could get a win there. Maybe they could get like a draw or spring a surprise against Flamenco. I did not see Flamenco being the strongest team in this group. So I think in the end, I'm not really surprised by that either. Maybe slightly disappointed just that they weren't able to get more. And then very pleasantly surprised that Inter Miami did get out of the group and will go on to play PSG and probably be eliminated in the first round. But that is par. So I think I set the over-under for MLS wins at 2.5, and I don't think we're going to get near the over on that one. But all the same, I still think it was more positive than negative for MLS teams, even if you have two not getting a single win.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know where to put the over and under, Taylor, on the wins, but I expected 3 out of 3 to go out in the group stage. So the fact that Inter Miami have gone through, I know they were in probably the weakest group, but having watched Inter Miami and talked about Inter Miami for the months prior to this tournament, I expected them to be much leakier at the back than they have turned out to be, and that's actually kind of been the big revelation for them, is they've actually looked relatively solid out of possession, have been more willing to play in sort of quick transition. So if they're able to do that against PSG, actually I can't even convince myself of that this is as far as they're going.
Yeah,
but I still think that's slightly above par for MLS as well.
I would agree, and I think that is probably where it will end for them. But I think an interesting way to look at it, I saw this on The Athletic, I think in the comment section on The Athletic, but if you look at European teams, 22 wins, 7 draws, 7 losses. That's a win percentage of 61%, a loss percentage of 19%. That's the best percentage breakdown of any federation, of any continent in this competition. South America next. So it kind of goes exactly how we thought. South American teams with a win percentage of 39%, loss percentage of 17%. And then it drops down to North America, Africa, Asia. And that's sort of what I expected. And of those, I think MLS has the lowest lose percentage, basically. They've only lost 53% of their games. They won 13%. So that MLS is like around like African and Asian clubs who have plenty of money and are doing okay, I think shows exactly where I thought they would be and where these things tend to go with the Club World Cup. So it wasn't nearly as embarrassing as I thought it could be. In the end, there are definitely some positives from it.
Yeah. And touching back on Atleti, Graham, do we get the impression they are very disappointed by this, or do we get the impression that Diego Simeone's Airbnb in Ibiza started today and he needed to get back for it?
That might be the case for Simeone. For the club, it's a huge blow for Atleti that they're out already, because they had put a real onus on this competition. I was reading before the tournament, I'm sure it was by Dermot Corrigan for The Athletic. I was reading before the tournament that their chief executive, Gil Marin, he had kind of taken real pride from Atleti being involved in this tournament, had been boasting that it showed Atleti were a genuine member of the elite now, because there's still that little insecurity for Atletico Madrid that they're maybe not on the level of Real Madrid or Barcelona. The fact that they were here and Barcelona were watching this at home apparently was a great source of pride for them. They had this kind of Casa Atleti, I think it was called, activation in LA, which is essentially like a fan clubhouse, which I'm sure cost a lot of money. It seems to be down on the beach. They had lots of kind of promotional stuff as well. So they really went all out for this tournament. So for them to be the first big European club to fall, I think, is a real embarrassment. And financially as well, they've missed out on 20 million euros by going out early. Had they made the semi-finals, that's worth 40 million euros for Atletico Madrid. So every way you look at this, it's bad for Atleti. In terms of their performances as well, they were bad in pretty much every game that they played. Even the game that they ended up winning against Seattle, I didn't think they were that impressive. The match that they ended up winning against Botafogo, it kind of highlighted the evolution that Atleti have still to make as a team, where this has been a talking point for ages, where they face someone who is sitting deep and willing to stay compact. They're just not creative enough. And in that game, you had Rodrigo de Paul having more touches of the ball than anyone else in the pitch. He's not really a creative force. He's not really a Kevin De Bruyne. So they're just not nimble enough to navigate those sort of situations, Atleti, and I think that showed at this tournament.
Graham, I think sometimes in the Champions League, if you're rooting for chaos and you're rooting for like the dark arts and the Simeone intensity, you want them to go far. But I feel like occasionally when they do knock out a team that has more attacking firepower, that is more likely to play aesthetically pleasing soccer, there's a feeling of like, oh, okay, I guess we're going to get more Atleti in the next round. Yeah. That could be fun. Rare do we see them get knocked out on the group stage. Do you feel like if you had to choose between Botafogo and Atleti, who offers the more exciting possibilities in the next round, either with their style of play, or maybe I guess it would be Botafogo with a surprise run over Atleti? But are you at all sad to see Atleti out, or are you more excited to see what Botafogo can do in the next round?
So I am more excited to see Botafogo in the next round, but not really from a soccer sense of things. I think the narrative is stronger with Botafogo being a Brazilian team, and of course being the South American champions. They've fallen down a little bit since then, but they won the Copa Lib last season. So love the narrative around Botafogo. Despite everything I've just said about Atleti, having watched Botafogo in all 3 games they've played at this tournament, they're like Atletico Madrid plus in the way that they play. And that might just be down to the fact they've had games against Atletico Madrid and PSG, and they've had no other choice to play that way. I think that game against Palmeiras is going to be really interesting if they're able to play that sort of stay compact and counter attack style of play against a team like Palmeiras. But yeah, Atleti, it reminds me of when Morocco made the semi-finals of the last World Cup, which was a great story. And I remember before those games being like, here we go, semi-finals of the World Cup. Oh, wait, Morocco aren't the best team to watch. But the narrative around them was great, and I think that's similar to Botafogo.
Very good. All right, let's take one more quick break. When we come back, we're going to look ahead to those big round of 16 matchups. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Club World Cup roundup. We're going to talk about the round of 16 matches, but a couple of questions before we get there. Graham, wildest game so far. I think you've mentioned you enjoyed that 2-2 draw that Boca had with... Who was that again?
With Benfica.
Benfica, that's right. How about the Porto 4, Al Ahly 4 game? Yeah. Where Al Ahly led 4 times. Both teams needed to win. Basically, both cancelled each other out and neither went through. Like, glorious tragedy we had there in the Club World Cup.
It was. Yeah, that was a great game. It was so incredibly open, and there was I think there was 3 goals in 3 minutes, just like maybe 5 minutes into the second half. I saw John Mueller posting about this on Blue Sky as well. There were 3 consecutive possession sequences that led to goals, which I don't think I've ever seen before in a match. So what I mean by that is one possession sequence, goal, kick-off, another sequence, goal, kick-off, another sequence, goal. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So yeah, that one will, even though it meant nothing for either team, that one will stick in the memory.
Yeah, computer game stuff. And Taylor, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Graham if he's going to have any fond memories of Dortmund 4, Mamelodi Sundowns 3. Mamelodi Sundowns we were all kind of excited about for not knowing much about them, but being excited by their style. And then for Dortmund, it feels like a very Dortmund performance where they go behind. I think, did they get up 4-1?
Yeah,
and then they
4-1
almost
up,
let Sundowns back in. Like, that feels like maybe more of the same from Dortmund.
Yeah, so true story. This is going to lean into self-parody, but it's entirely true. That game was played during my daughter's birthday party.
Oh, Graham.
And
Graham.
maybe got in a little bit of trouble as that game went to 4-2, and I was watching that on my phone in the corner. But I did rewatch it.
Trouble with which of the two possible parties?
With Lucy.
Okay.
Not too much trouble. She knows me too well. She knew what she got into. But I watched it when I got home. It was a super interesting game. It's a shame that Mamelodi Sundowns have gone home because they really stuck true to their style of attractive football. They've got that nickname of the Brazilians and the shoe shiners or something.
Still
like
haven't
that.
looked it up. Yeah,
It's
definitely not the shoe shiners.
Go back to our previews. It's in there, their nickname. But I love Mamelodi Sundowns, and also Dortmund are doing some interesting things in this tournament as well, mainly relating to the positions of Svensson and Adeyemi in and out of possession. So basically, Svensson's playing the left side of midfield. Adeyemi's playing as one half of a front two, and when they're in possession, Svensson goes inside, Adeyemi comes out left, and there's just all this space that opens up. And Joe Bellingham, by the way, has been the main one to benefit from that. He's been excellent at this tournament. I actually think he is a rare victim of nepotism, because I think people think, well, he can't be as good as Jude Bellingham. He's just got to move to Dortmund because of his surname, and maybe he won't be as good as Jude Bellingham. He still looks the absolute business, and my prediction is that there's going to be 2 Bellinghams that go to the World Cup next year. I think Job is going to make that England team as well, which is just unfair. Just unfair that for that family to have. I would just take one. If Sophie could make the Scotland team and make a World Cup, I'd be happy with that, quite frankly.
Wow. She'd probably be happy if you actually paid attention during her birthday party, to be fair.
Right? It's the only way Graham's going to pay attention to her during her birthday is if she's playing in a World Cup. Shoe shine and piano, to look it up.
There we go.
Shoe shine and piano.
That's it.
Good stuff. Taylor, in terms of any standout players, I'd like to spotlight Kenan Yildiz of Juventus. Big performances he's had, a couple against the Wydad and the Alain games. Very impressive in both of those, and probably has scored the goal of the tournament too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And Yildiz Lightning, so he plays like lightning. That's what his last name means. So yeah,
really
Kenan Yildiz. Yeah, I believe.
That.
Or Yildiz might be lightning, but it's the same root, so it's probably something along those lines. Either way, it's fun to see him break through. On that note, it's fun to see Arda Güler continue to do things for Real Madrid under Xabi Alonso. Turkey getting stronger. And then while I'm on the Real Madrid front, Graham mentioned him. Gonzalo Garcia is a fascinating one. I don't know how many minutes he will actually end up playing for Real Madrid this season because of all the firepower they have, but that he is starting and that Rodrigo is on the bench, still getting minutes, but on the bench, Rodrigo. It does make me wonder if that is kind of a statement of intent from Xabi Alonso of the academy will still be a viable option for us. We're still going to bring through youngsters. We're still going to see what everybody can bring. Even with the names we have, if you fit the system better and you allow us to play better, potentially that means you're going to be starting. So I think that he has hit the ground running and looked the business under Alonso is nothing but a positive if you are a Madrid supporter.
Very much so. So, by the way, if Kenan Yildiz, if a member of his family married a member of Steve McQueen's family, they'd be the Lightning McQueens. I just wanted to put that out there. I very much would enjoy that. Round of 16 action coming up, Graham. The box office match, is it Real Madrid Juventus, or do you have your eye somewhere else?
I guess you could. That is the most obvious box office match because of the stature of the two clubs. But Flamengo Bayern is the standout game for me because I've kind of teased this already. I feel like when I'm picking my bracket, I have to go for one upset just to make things interesting, and this is where I'm looking for my upset. I think Flamengo, as I've outlined already, they've shown their real quality by demolishing Chelsea, and much like that Chelsea game, this is an interesting matchup because both teams want to do the same thing. Bayern will want to have the ball, Flamengo will want to have the ball, so it's going to be a real tug of war in that sense. And I expect a competitive game, even if Bayern do come through that. which is probably where the easy money is still to bet on the multiple-time German champions with the £100 million striker. But I expect Flamengo will measure up relatively well in this game.
Graham, when you say a competitive game, do you mean a close game or do you mean like a hotly contested back and forth game?
Well, both, I guess.
Let me ask you this:
How many goals?
How many goals? Basically, I'm wondering: do you mean like it's going to be a tight, cagey affair where they're both capable of doing things but don't, or do you think it will be like a 4-3 game? Because that is the expectation I have seen from both sets of supporters: is that it's going to be a very open, back and forth, high-scoring game, and I am excited for that to be the possibility. Yeah. So often, when I think that's going to happen, it ends up 1-0 or like 0-0 on penalties.
I think Flamengo probably don't want an open game that ends 4-3 because I would just back the likes of Michael Elise and Harry Kane and everyone else to have the higher ceiling in terms of like top end talent. If it becomes just a shootout, I think Bayern possibly win that one. Flamengo, I think they want to control the game. And look, the thing is, the player they've got at the base of their midfield to do that is Jorginho. Like, it's not like they're asking someone who hasn't been at that level to play at that level against Bayern Munich. There's someone that can hold their own in that sense. And they've got experienced players throughout that team. But I think Flamengo are probably going to want to replicate what they did against Chelsea, which was quite a measured performance. It wasn't, Chelsea were kind of kept under the thumb in that match, and then the rotations through the midfield into the attack were the thing that created the opportunities for Flamengo. I expect Bayern will have periods of the game where they're well on top. It's just whether they can make the most of those periods.
Yeah. Taylor, PSG taking on Inter Miami. Messi
Congratulations
derby.
to PSG.
I mean, can Inter Miami hang with PSG at all, do you think? How's this going to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they get numbers behind the ball, if they take advantage of set pieces, and I think if PSG are a little bit slack, and if Messi has a point to prove, if you give him a free kick within 30 yards of goal, I feel like if you give him 2, he's scoring 1, put it that way. So, like, I could see Inter Miami getting something off of a set piece, something against the run of play. But I just still think PSG are the PSG team we've come to expect from them this season. I think they have so much firepower. I think they have so much variety in the way they want to attack. I just think this is a bridge too far for Inter Miami.
Yeah. They need Messi to get hot in that game. They also need PSG to be, when I say even less intense, that doesn't mean that they haven't had intensity in their performances, but they definitely have been a step off at this tournament so far, which is understandable given the season they're coming off the back of, and even I think just like mentally as well, going straight into another tournament after winning the Champions League must be difficult. If they play Champions League, PSG and Miami have absolutely no shot. But they have been a little bit less intense in the games that they've played. They've also been without Ousmane Dembele, and they lose a dimension. I actually don't know if he's going to be back for this game against Inter Miami. That might change what I'm about to say. But if he is not playing, I think Inter Miami lose a little bit of fluidity in that front line to such an extent that Lucho has been using Sene Miulu
PSG
as
loses fluidity, right?
Yeah. What did I say?
I think you said Inter Miami, and I was very confused for a moment.
Yeah. PSG.
Ryan has celebratory balloons going off in the background while we're having this conversation.
Chaotic.
Always my favorite. I was like, Ousmane Dembele not being there makes Inter Miami lose fluidity? Now I'm confused.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
Sorry, it's actually Graham's daughter here going, someone celebrate me, please.
She's happy now. So yeah, to my point, I think if Dembele doesn't play in this game, then Inter Miami have like a 2% better chance. But even then, it's going to be difficult for them.
And that's not, I don't think, doing a disservice to Inter Miami. It's a credit to them that they got here. It's just that, like, you would have to have a couple different players for PSG having calamitous performances, I think, versus with Inter Miami, given the squad imbalance. I just think there's more likelihood that somebody switches off, somebody over pursues a player that they shouldn't, and it just opens up opportunities. And I think if PSG get up 1-0 or 2-0, I don't think Inter Miami end up making this close.
Okay. Just to run through the round of 16 games, it starts on Saturday with Palmeiras and Botafogo in Philly, Benfica and Chelsea in Charlotte on that day, and the other games, of course, we've just covered: Inter Milan, Fluminense, Manchester City, Al Hilal, and on the other side of the bracket, PSG into Miami, Flamengo, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Juventus, and Borussia Dortmund, Monterrey. So plenty of good games coming up. Graham, anything else you wanted to fill out of those? I get the feeling that Benfica, if they've already taken a big scalp here. They could take a Chelsea, couldn't they?
They certainly could. I mean, Chelsea are a little bit unpredictable at the moment. I do think Liam Delap has looked really good for them since coming in. That already is looking like a good addition. But Benfica have quality. They too can be a little bit unpredictable. I don't think we've seen under them at this tournament. Bruno Lage wants his team to play like front foot football, and so again they might end up having to play against the ball and having to counter and break against Chelsea in this match. But yeah, that one is a bit of a toss-up. I mean, the toss-up games are Palmeiras, Botafogo, Benfica, Chelsea, and
Dortmund,
Flamengo, Bayern
today.
Maybe. I mean,
Inter Fluminense?
No, probably not.
Okay.
Although Inter haven't been great. Are we going to do a quick bracket? Shall we
Let's
do a
it
very
really
quick
fast.
bracket?
Because I think Fluminense is fascinating to me. I think I'm correct in saying that they've been the most direct attacking team. And you could see a reality in which that could cause problems. I'm just not sure it could cause problems against Inter, who seem set up to deal with that pretty effectively and then play that style themselves. So I think maybe if Fluminense were catching a different opponent, maybe I would say they're more likely. I think this is just a bad matchup for them, even if Inter aren't always the most impressive team. I think Inter get through that one, and then I'll continue that little part of the bracket. I think Man City beat Al Hilal. I know that's a brave prediction, but I think they're going to find a way to do it. So I have Inter and Man City getting through there. Graham, since I've done the much more difficult part of that bracket to navigate, why don't you do Palmeiras, Botafogo, and Benfica, Chelsea?
So I'll go with
Noble.
Botafogo to get through against Palmeiras. I think that one will go to penalties. I think that one's going to be... The spectacle of that game is going to be incredible. I think you could argue that is one of the most significant games in modern Brazilian club football. The fact that there's a place in the quarterfinals on the table for one of those two teams. But I just think Botafogo, they seem a little bit more secure in what they're trying to do at this tournament. Palmeiras have been a little bit confusing to me, even if they do have a little bit...
I was going to say Palmeiras also winless in 5 against Botafogo, for what it's worth.
Well, there we go. I didn't know that, but that adds to my theory. So I'll go with Botafogo. I'll go with Chelsea for the other one, and I agree with you, Taylor, with Inter and Man City. I think those are pretty much gimmies for the the quarterfinals on that side of the bracket.
All right. Do you want to keep going on this side of the bracket?
Well, we've done this side of the bracket. We now go to the other side.
Oh, you mean run it through to the final?
Go to the final. Why not?
I mean, I have City beating Inter to get to the semi-final.
Yep. Chelsea
Botafogo, Chelsea.
You've got... There's just too much top-end talent. It wouldn't overly surprise me if Botafogo beat Chelsea, but yeah, I'll go with Chelsea.
Botafogo versus City in the semifinal. Man City beat Botafogo. Right. On the other side of the bracket, PSG will beat Miami. And then Flamengo, Bayern. Graham, is that your upset special?
Yeah, that's my upset, but I wouldn't, feel free to pick Bayern.
I'll go with Graham. Why not? Let's get one. Let's get another upset in there. I think Real Madrid. This is entirely informed by watching Juve just get dismantled by Man City, and Man City are very, very good. Who knows if Real Madrid are at that level on the day, but I still think based on that, I have Real Madrid. And then Dortmund Monterrey. I mean, it should be Dortmund, right? They have more firepower, they have more consistency, they spent more money, but there's still Dortmund, who are erratic, even if they've been okay in this tournament. They've drawn Fluminense, beaten Sundowns, as we talked about, and then they win their last game against Ulsan. But I think it's just still we haven't seen them against opposition that we would say is truly challenging, that we would expect to cause problems for them, and maybe that is this Monterrey side. Graham, it sounds like you're still leaning Dortmund all the same, though.
Yeah, I think they've been relatively good at this tournament so far. Okay. I hear what you're saying about they haven't faced a big test, but I wouldn't say Monterrey are a big test either.
That is the issue. Yeah. It's just they can make life difficult. Put it that way, Monterrey. I mean, they draw with Inter. They drew with River as well, and then they get the win on the last day. So I think they can be a difficult team. I'll say this: if it's 0-0 in the 60th, I might start to feel like it's Monterrey's game to spring a surprise. But I think if Dortmund are able to score in the first half, I think they win.
Dortmund are capable of messing things up, so we will see there. So who's getting to the quarters ends? Real Madrid and Dortmund, do we think in that?
Yeah, from that part of the bracket.
PSG Flamengo is where we're going. Okay.
I mean, I'm putting my neck on the line with the Flamengo one, but I think ultimately we're going to end up with a semi-final from this side of the bracket of PSG versus Real Madrid. That's where I think Taylor.
That's
and I
quite a semi, isn't it?
And yeah, that is quite a semi-final. Yeah, and then from there. Oh man, honestly, I think we might be on course for a Man City Real Madrid final. PSG have just, as I said a little while ago, they've just looked a little bit a step off it at this tournament. If Dembele's not playing, then I think they lose a bit of a dimension there. So that would probably be of all European finals, that probably is the most interesting one we could get, just because there's interesting stuff on both sides. Whereas if we get if we get another Inter Milan PSG final, I don't know if I've got much juice for that, having just watched it a month ago.
Graham, here's a question I never thought would have an actual like debatable answer. If you have a PSG Real Madrid semifinal, who is more important that they play for their respective side? Dembele for PSG or Mbappe for Real Madrid?
Dembele for PSG,
which is insane, right?
Yeah, that seems a bit insane.
That's wild to believe that and have that be the case. But yeah, I think if Dembele isn't there and Mbappe isn't there, I give the edge to Real Madrid. If Dembele is there and Mbappe isn't there, that's still kind of balanced. But I think yeah, you need a bit more if you're going to get past that Real Madrid team. But that's a really fascinating semi-final. I can't wait.
There you go. So there you have it, listener. We're predicting a Man City versus Real Madrid or PSG final. This is why we get the medium bucks for that kind of wild prediction here on Total Soccer Show. But we'll be back to talk about the Club World Cup next week as well, of course. But for now, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for all your insight, as always, my good man.
Thank you very much for all of your hosting and willingness to try to navigate that last question. Listeners, if you're not watching, Ryan trying to track my Dembele Mbappe question was a fun exercise in how much he could contort his body and squeeze his face into a confused face. Thank you, Ryan.
I'm just slower than everyone else, Taylor. It took me a while to digest. That's all.
Hey, nobody else here got celebratory balloons, is all I'm saying.
That coffee that you just got delivered, that'll help with that digestion.
Yeah. This is my first ever recording where I got a mid-recording coffee delivery. I feel like a king right now, Graham Ruthven. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey. You need Auckland City. Like they're residential at this point with me. They bring me coffee during each episode every day. It's great.
Nice. Must be nice for you having some Kiwi assistance. Very good indeed, listener. Thank you very much for joining us on this episode and all the episodes. We hope you have a lovely weekend. We'll be back on the feed very shortly. But for now, bye.